Welcome, Storm Nation. Hey, guys, it is a live show here Friday morning at Storm HQ, September 26th, just a few days after the autumnal equinox. And how fitting that we should have a live show talking about Storm's newest and latest technology, the Storm Equinox Solid. So, this is a big one. Always nice to do a live intro, get us kind of the insights and development and design that came to this ball. And we're going to have some really special guests join us on the show today, talk a little bit about some of the development. Myself behind the designs, along with my cohort in crime, Alex Hoskins, as well, to deliver some really great insights about this new, latest, and greatest technology of Equinox Solid. So let's give you a little tease of what to expect and what coming forward. There you get to see it. Really cool. You got two of the greatest players in the world there between Verity Crawley and Chris Vi. But hey, you see the guy on the screen there as well? He's a superstar here in the bowling world too. Young and upcomer. I guess if you were thinking about all the sports that's going on right now, Ryder Cup, the United States is getting their butt kicked. And then, you think about baseball, and if we're down to the playoffs and everything, and you got all those key players. But we have the key player here on the screen with us today, too. Alex Hoskins is our Director of Research and Development. Alex has been a very key element behind lots of the designs that come out of this building. Him and myself spend a lot of time collaborating to create some of those great designs that you've seen from the three brands that come here from Storm HQ. Alex, welcome on to the show today. I know you're downstairs in that office of yours, that nice big giant masking unit screen on your wall.
Yeah, everybody always asks, where did that go? Well, I threw it in here.
Yeah, we have that digital one now, so you get the cool one with the Storm overlay behind you there. So let's talk a little bit about Equinox Solid. I know that this process, we brought the Equinox out earlier this year. The Solarian core was something I created to be a little bit different in asymmetric technology, something that was unique in having the cylinders alternate in size, the mass cylinder around the middle, and then the alternating from the top to the bottom. That's kind of staggered, where a little bit larger mass at the top to help us create the top weight, help us to create the imbalance closer to the pin. And then the heavy mass slug at the bottom that enhances that torque effect, helps us with torque-induced precession, going through the lane. But just created something totally different. But I think some of the key factors that also, when we looked at the original Equinox, was the A1S cover. I mean, the A1S cover was something that was different. We created a different adhesion to the lane. Some unique principles and thoughts, went into that. We spent a lot of time trying to develop that cover, trying to develop that technology. And then when we brought it to the marketplace, we really pushed the envelope pushed that we were trying to build a ball for the masses, trying to build a ball for a lot of different types of patterns, because the majority of patterns fall in certain distances, we know, and we were just trying to create a ball for all of it. So it was something really cool. But let's fast forward here, Equinox Solid. So I think the minute we were testing Solarian core, we were testing it with all kinds of different covers to begin with. And the original Equinox fell upon that A1S. And then, so everybody's always like, the minute the ball hits the streets, what's next, right? Hey, what are you going to do? Are we going to make a solid? You're going to make a hybrid? What are you going to do, guys? What are we going to do here? So fast forward here to Equinox Solid. The testing. Talk to us a little bit about this testing, Alex. Tell us, kind of, you and I went through it, but there was a lot to this.
Yeah, A2S, this whole testing process with Equinox Solid was probably one of the most robust cover stock tests that we've ever done in terms of a new bowling ball. Usually we have a lot of different tweaks that we do, but as far as actual bowling balls that were made with different cover stocks on it, we were up to 7 different renditions on this, and Steve and Chad were a really big part in the testing process of all these different covers. And I remember I kept sending emails to both of them. Hey, I got another Equinox Solid for you to throw. Hey, I got another Equinox Solid for you to throw. Pretty soon, their entire test rack was just completely full with Equinox Solids. We had some that were really early, some that kind of got down the lane a little bit further than we wanted, but we really wanted to make sure that this second generation of the adhesion system was going to be more based on that feedback that we got from those top level players. You remember the videos with the original Equinox, we had a lot of players come in and test it. We took some of that feedback and really created something that shapes a little bit more down lane than you would expect out of a solid that's sanded at 2000. So it's kind of the design intent behind the Equinox Solid. Even though it's a solid and has a little bit more surface on it, you're going to see it cover a little bit more boards down lane compared to something like an Ion Max that has NRG. It's a little earlier, kind of more rounded, better. Definitely as they're fresher, and then as that front part of the lane goes away, it gets a little harder to get it through the pins. So Equinox Solid is in that same realm, but covers more boards down lane compared to that.
Yeah, and I think the big thing too is, I mean, and going through all those tests, and it was funny with me and you and Chad in there, Steve in there, and you'd grab those balls in all the different pin colors, and we were like, okay, we know what that, we knew what it was, and then Chad was like, I think that one's a little bit, and then there were so many good combinations, and just in the end falling on this A2S and falling on this cover, and I think it was kind of a broader spectrum that we were thinking about here, because there were some covers, and we could have got closer to a look of an Ion Max, and we could have got closer to that look, but we weren't trying to. We were trying to create, once again, a synergy within the lines between all 3 lines, but really trying to create a synergy here of an Ion Max that's still a great selling ball, still a very popular ball, still something that's still very much in the forefront of pro shops' minds, players' minds, of, hey, that's my big oil ball. That's when there's a lot of volume. And so we were trying to make the complement to that. But also, too, is there's a second caveat to that we have to really think about, too, is that, as we progress across different types of bowling, whether it's tournament bowling to league bowling to just, let's go out and have fun bowling. We know that over the last several years, the lane beds are starting to age a little bit. We're starting to get lane beds, even though they're synthetics and the synthetic surfaces are firmer and they create a little more skid, they're starting to get some traffic on them. They're starting to get some friction on them. And sometimes in a lot of places that we bowl, there's not quite, in the league situation or tournament situation, the volumes can be high at some points, but they do diminish quicker. The surface shows itself faster. And as we progressed and as we looked at this technology and we looked at the Solarian core, knowing that rounded shape and that continuous motion down lane that we've seen out of the original, let's enhance it, but let's not let it get too fast off the front. Let's not. So that was that 7 different iterations of cover to go, hey, this one makes the perfect match. And in the end, going to this A2S and creating that footprint in the right parts of the lane, like you talk about, that little bit more middle to the back of the lane. Still handles just as much oil. I mean, coming to you with a surface 2000 grit, as you know, and you're one of the greatest bowlers here in the Northwest, and one of the great bowlers here in the country. You're not afraid for a little more surface if you need to. It's always, I kind of I've watched you hit some with 180 a couple of times in some situations, but not to that extreme on a ball like this. But your average player comes out of the box at 2000 and they're like, well, maybe a little more. And it's easy to always adjust a little bit more, but it's also easy on the other side of it to make it a little bit smoother, to create a little more length, because the wide variety of players, from a slow speed player with a high rev to a high speed player with lower revs, I mean, it's still the shape and the technology put into it is such a bigger spectrum of players that it can hit, such a bigger player, just a huge gamut of conditions that this thing can be very valuable on. As we know, players can have multitudes of balls in their bags, but sometimes they need balls in their bags that have versatility, that they can go up and go down. And this combination between this core and this cover gives us a lot of versatility.
Yeah, and that was really the big goal with really this whole Equinox series, right? Is trying to cover as many different styles, as many different patterns as we can on this. And that's one thing about A2S that's really good is you can sand it down quite a bit more, and you can go a little bit more up depending on what your style is. It's always important for these covers to make sure that they're easily manipulated with surface, because we know people are using Abralon pads, and you're seeing all kinds of different lane beds, oil patterns, styles, etc. So that was a big part of the testing as well. Lots of different surface testing. We landed on 2000 because, again, you got a solid ball, and you'll still be surprised how much this shapes off the end of the pattern with it still being at 2000, which is pretty aggressive out of the factory here.
Yeah, and we see, high RA values out of covers like this because, you're trying to create some topography and just trying to create a place to display soil. And then you have mechanical friction versus chemical friction, and the mechanical friction is created by that. You surfacing the ball with a 2000 grit, whatever, that creates that mechanical friction in the cover. But the cool thing about it is the chemical friction of this cover is something that's pretty special. And that's when we came across this and we used this on the original, this technology in the A1S and the Equinox, we saw that ball still wanted to dig in kind of into the oil, but not slow it down too much. But man, I'm telling you, the footprint when it got into the dry was something that was very much unique, and it was like it almost like widened out when it got down lane to the dry, and it just gave us that really adhesion to the lane. It gave us that shape and that motion down lane, which made the Equinox so special to so many people. And so this being in a solid version, you have a solid, less the interference mica, so now you have a solid, a couple of different unique color schemes or whatever. People will talk about colors and how much more they make balls hook. Anyway, but now you have it that you still have that chemical in that cover to create that adhesion, but now you have a solid and topography built in with the chemical bonds as well as the mechanical topography as well too. So it's just kind of a good combination coming forward with this Equinox Solid. I think we're going to see like I said, a wide variety of players have something that's good on the fresh in a lot of different situations and moments. But like we talked about, this isn't the strongest, biggest ball coming out of Utah, but it is a great complement to the line that we have in all three brands. So
Exactly.
anything else you'd like to share, Alex, in this start to the introduction before we start bringing in some other guests?
I really, if you just want to talk, we didn't talk too much about the core. I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but I did have a couple of things, a funny story that I wanted to share that you'll like. I do remember actually when you brought this, because you drew this shape. I
Yep.
do remember when you brought this to me. It was around April of 2024. So
Yep.
that kind of gives you an idea. Equinox came out in February, so you can kind of see how long that process is to get to the actual ball there. But I remember you slapped down the papers on my desk, and I was like, that's pretty simple looking. And then I kind of looked at it a little bit more, and I was like, oh, wow, I see what you did there. There's a little bit more going on with the three different cylinders at the three different levels, and there's a lot of turbulence in the shape there. So it really is kind of a unique shape that, again, enhances that A2S cover and helps it get off the end of the pattern a little bit harder than something like an Ion Max, the Element Max core that I designed. So
Sure.
again, diversifying the line, trying to make sure that everybody has something for every situation, I think is a key thing to highlight.
And the cool thing, and not to get too technical and crazy about that Solarian core, is you're trying to create that turbulence because you're creating that the main cylinder is that where we're trying to create that dominant PSA. But now you take two alternate cylinders, one of a little bit larger mass than the bottom cylinder, but half the mass of the middle cylinder. And think about that in rotation and turn. You have that one cylinder, the big cylinder in the center is trying to find itself. It's trying to find itself. But you have two alternating cylinders that are going, hey, wait a minute, we have enough mass on another axis that's trying to, let's create it to keep torquing and turning. and then you
Yeah,
throw the
there's a lot.
slug at the bottom that creates an even more torque effect at the bottom. Now you've really enhanced this across all those between the X, Y, and Z axes, and you try to create that turbulence you talked about, and we talked about from the very beginning in the original Equinox. It is just something that's different. We had a little bit of teasing into that technology. If you go way back to a triliptic core that we found back, and I designed, I think 15, 16 years ago, something like that. But those two masses alternating top and bottom were the same density, same size. And we saw something in that. And then I said, well, let's make a progression from X to Y, and then Z, and then trying to create, hey, wait a minute, can I get even more interference or turbulence across those axes to create a constant motion? That's what you're always trying to do. People, asymmetric balls, and the tendency is they torque so much, sometimes once they line up, they feel like they get a little tumbly, a little forward. So you're trying to avoid, you want it in some situations, but in some situations you want it to kind of feel like it gets online, but yet I want to still keep it going through the pins, because ultimately, as we've done those pin carry studies, we know that entry angle is the magic thing, and the continuation of the ball through the pin decks and staying on that line is huge. And so that concept kind of bleeds into this Solarian core, and we saw the successes of the original Equinox. Now you have an oil ball or a heavier volume ball that's going to have the same principles going through the pins. So now you've created something that wants to read front to back and still keep going left to right down lane. So that's the cool thing about, marrying the technology of the core with the cover.
Absolutely.
So I think let's time to launch into our first guest. This guy, he's one of the biggest behind the scenes player within our family and our team of the last several years, and has worked and been a mentor, a coach, a technical advisor to some of the best players in the world. And he's been a big part of this whole development process between the first one and this second one. So let's welcome him in, Blair. Look at that. Rob Gottschall joining us from Texas.
Hey,
Welcome,
how's it
Rob.
going, guys? Good to be here today.
So, Rob, you just came in a couple of weeks ago. We filmed, and you got some good online time with one of your good close friends in Verity. I think that's like your wife's best friend, isn't it? Verity Crawley?
Yes, it is.
And then Chris Vi, U.S. Open champion, one of the most prolific players in our sport right now, as one of the powerhouses of the two-handed player and style. And you got Verity, who's one of the cleanest, smoothest, kind of off her hand, and one of the most practiced players and successful players on the ladies' side as well too. So you got to spend a little bit of time with them. Give us a little insights of kind of what you saw and their feedback from the original, because they were part of the original when we introduced it to them in Vegas several months back. So kind of give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I one of the kind of cool things that I've been able to be a part of this Equinox series is kind of post-development, but pre-release to the consumer, and just kind of being able to, get a raw take on the product, right? You guys develop a lot of products each year. It's very difficult to, fine tune a lot of things, and this Equinox series had some very, very specific development things. From, you go to the original, where it was designed to, be used on 80% of the patterns, be nice and clean through the front, have a nice continuous motion on the back. And then, the solid version, obviously, the consumer wanted more hook, things like that. But the thing that really stood out to me when the players threw the balls for the first time at HQ a couple weeks ago was the length it got for the surface it had, but then it also continued. As you develop these, bigger asymmetrical sanded balls, they tend to be very early, and you said it earlier, they can get quite forward. And this one did not do that. You've said the word a couple of times that I like to use. It's, marrying the core and the cover is a very, very tricky thing, and to do it for the masses. And that's where, through the development of the, Solarian core, it doesn't seem to rev up too quickly if you have a high rev rate, or, kind of waste its energy if you're a little slower ball speed and things. So I think the core has really complemented both cover stocks, but the fact that, this sanded A2S is able to clear the front, but also have some, really good continuation down lane for a, sanded ball, it was very impressive.
Yeah, and that was the kind of, as Alex and were talking earlier, is it's trying to find that kind of complement one to the other, and the 7 iterations of cover, trying to find that right marriage of those two is definitely what we did, and I think the players were quite pleased when they got to throw those. I know we'll have some videos to share here in a second, but give us their take a little bit of what you saw out of them, between Verity and Chris.
Yeah, I think as a player, when they tend to use these balls, they tend to use them a little more on the fresh. Maybe get a little scared when they start to move left. Just that ball will start to lose a little bit of energy in flat 10. And the thing that stood out for both of them is they could make those bigger, bold moves as the lane broke down, and it just kept coming, right, and to where they didn't necessarily feel like they needed to get out of that ball. As we continued to shoot videos throughout the couple days we were there, we did do some comparisons with the two balls, which those videos will be released over the coming weeks and things. But that was another thing that they were impressed with, that they could be just such a good 1-2 punch, right? Uh, you know, Verity, for example, would be rev dominant for a female player, right? Her ball speed's a little slower, things like that. So she doesn't get to use balls with this much, RA value and surface traction on the lanes, especially like you were talking with the higher friction surfaces. And she had no problem getting it through the front of the lane, even through a couple kind of out the window, where they would generally roll out in 210, and they kind of got back and crumbled them over a little bit. So her eyes lit up quite a bit. Chris, on the other hand, obviously he has plenty of power to get most any ball to come back. But we drilled, a couple balls, higher flaring layout, lower flaring layout, and he was able to just kind of keep taking those steps left, and he never really lost control of the lane, or the pocket, or any of the reaction that he was looking for.
Yeah, and you touched on that there too. Is it using a couple different layouts, and the versatility behind this core is, the up layouts to get it to flare faster, transition quicker, versus the down layouts. And I know that in several situations we see a lot of using a little bit more down layouts and asymmetrics because of how the fronts kind of go away a little bit, and we start to trying to make this ball continue and be a little more round down lane. And I know you've used a little bit more of those on tour, a lot actually this last year, for a lot of different players, to kind of help them where they still need a ball that wants to define itself, but we got to make it a little slower in the transition. Sometimes the symmetrics don't quite give us enough kind of roll and continuation. They do, but they need a little more friction. And then if they get too much friction, it's kind of an over-under look, where you can take these and make these down or bigger buffer asymmetrics and give them kind of a blended between.
Absolutely. You said it there perfectly, where the symmetrical is just not quite enough. It really was kind of the perfect gap filler from, an Ion Max and say maybe a Phase 2, right? Where there's just a little too much volume on the lane, or there's just not enough friction. And this kind of perfectly fit right in that little space, to where it was clean enough, but it obviously had enough teeth to slow down and make the right motion.
Yeah, and then we saw that with the use of the Equinox through a lot of the ladies' stops, and some of the I saw it with some of the men as well too, using Equinox. Even the big rev players, a lot of people fear the asymmetrics, but we saw the shape kind of give them a little bit of both. I think Josie was it the ball she used to win? Was it the ball she used to win the U.S. Open?
She won the Queens. She won the
Queens. I was trying to remember. She won a major with it. Yeah, Equinox. Yeah. So just that,
I think.
Go ahead.
I think the other big thing is just it produces consistent ball motion. It's I don't like to use necessarily the word predictable, but it's just consistent, shot in, shot out, makes what it's going to do. And I think that's where, between using the Equinox with the A1S and now the Equinox Solid with the A2S, you got two balls, you know exactly what they're going to do, and they're made for a wide variety of patterns and player types.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is, as Alex will attest to, is in the modern game of bowling, based on the volumes that go onto the lane and players and styles. I mean, we gravitate to asymmetry a little bit more than symmetry these days, just because we lost the use of a balance hole to kind of help in dialing sometimes those symmetrics. And now, when you don't have that defined spin axis, I mean, it does after drilling, but usually in the symmetric, it's closer to the thumb hole. So, and that's a later, longer progression transition distance that axis is migrating across the ball. So, yeah, and you've seen great successes out of these, Alex. I think it's something you and I talk about all the time is, I think asymmetry is a lot more valuable across a lot more bowlers than it's ever been in years past.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like you say, after losing the balance holes, the less holes you have in the ball, the less you can manipulate it. So you have to build that asymmetry into the shape in order for the player to be able to take advantage of it. But Rob, I really do like what you said on repeatability of the reaction of the ball. And a lot of that is to get back to like A1S and A2S, it comes down to the breakthrough that we had on oil absorption on that. The quicker that the ball absorbs oil, the tackier that surface stays, regardless if you wipe the ball off or not, and it adheres to the lane. That's kind of why we called it adhesion. So you definitely will feel like shot to shot, you have a more consistent overall shape, regardless of how much volume's on the lane, how far down the lane the oil is, etc. So that's kind of just one thing that I feel like was really good highlighted there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's time to bring in another guest, and let's have a little bit of insight from one of the top players in the world, one of the biggest rev rates we see on tour, and one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Kind of, clean cut. That guy. Those Ohio guys are all great guys. They're all just good people, and good Buckeyes fans and all that. Oh, did I say that out loud? Sorry, Rob. Cornhuskers fan. Anyway, well, let's welcome. Can we welcome him in, Blair? Oh, there he is. Chris Vi. Join us, Springfield, Ohio. Just about 25 minutes from where I grew up. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Hey, buddy. Good to see you. Good to. I like the beard, like the growth. I had one last week,
Thank you.
but
Thank you.
Lindsay said to me, "You know what? I can't stand it." So it's clean. And then Aiden said, "Dad, I haven't seen your chin in a long time," because always had a little chin music. But he's like, "Dad, keep shaving." I was like, "Okay, buddy. You take care of your kids, right?" Anyway, Chris, you were here. You threw it. You threw the original. You were a big part of the original, a big part of the rollout of the original. And then you came in and you got to throw the Equinox Solid. Give us your thoughts and feedback and kind of what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have hit it, right on the head from the start here. It's that, it's a big bowling ball without it feeling like a big bowling ball. It's just one of those that, just from a pro shop side of things, sometimes I may steer some people away from the really big bowling balls if they're just bowling league, just because the window to use them is pretty short. But I feel like this one is that kind of big ball that it's going to work on a lot of different things, just because it does get through the front part of the lane a little bit better, but still has that big traction spot in the middle part of the lane, and it's going to allow you to control the back part of the lane. Like Rob said, we were able to chase it pretty much as far left as humanly possible. We could have probably moved the wall a little bit further in HQ, and I probably could have kept going there a little bit. But yeah, it had no problem getting back from anywhere on the lane. And I can't remember the length of the pattern we were bowling on, but it was a longer pattern with some good volume. So we were definitely putting it to the test. And yeah, it passed with flying colors for me.
Yeah, Rob, a little bit. I know that you talked a little bit about Chris and Verity and that, and I know that, like I said, I think we're going to share a video here in a minute, Blair, of Chris being extremely left and still continuing to get it to shape, even from left. And sometimes that's difficult to do with an asymmetric, and especially with one with a textured surface.
Yeah, Chris, we shot it on 46 feet, fairly high volume, I believe is the Boltopia pattern. And so it was very, very enlightening to see and get his feedback on things. And just, sometimes when people throw a ball for the first time, they kind of have that confused look because they're trying to learn and gather information. But the two of them, when they shot this video, it was, they got the tech doc just like, all the consumers can see the tech doc. Here's what it says it's going to do. And, when they threw it, it did exactly what it says.
And that's always,
I think the big thing,
go ahead, Chris.
sorry there, but I would say, I know, I bowled on the Boltopia pattern in Boltopia in Korea. So I had some previous, reps on it, and, over there, obviously maybe a different lane surface, but, I never really got left of, 20 at the arrows. And I think we have some videos showing that, I'm substantially further left than that, and it's still shaping nice down lane. So, it was impressive, that's for sure.
Blair, you want to share that? Yeah, Blair's going to share that with us.
Perfect.
And that's, there was a couple different angles there too. I mean, you got one a little farther right there at the end, and it still, kind of slapped the 10 out. That's the whole magic, as Alex will tell you. That's a little farther right, a little bit more offset to the pocket, a little bit behind it. And in general, 95% of the time, it's gonna strike. But but there's those little windows where 3 to 5% of the time we don't with a standard core. That extra shot or two that you get with an AI core that gives you a little bit of different energy transfer definitely gives you those little bit off pocket hits. And we can see that right there with that one.
Yeah, and that's the hit, right, Chris, out there when you're bowling on tour. I mean, you kind of leak it right a little bit, big asim ball. You want to see it come off of that and still chop the 10 out like that. If you go and it rolls forward off of it, flat 10s, there goes 20 pins on your double. So you got to make it up now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, I kind of shy away from using the big, strong asymmetric bowling balls a lot because I tend to see those 10 pins kind of stand up. And obviously with my rev rate, the big asymmetry, they kind of want to get off that axis pretty quick, and they have trouble getting to go through the pins the right way. And this one had no problems. It kind of got through that front part of the lane where I tend to fight the asymmetrics way better. And then it kind of took over in that middle part of the lane. So, I'm really excited for this one.
Good. Hey, you know what? Let's switch gears just a little bit, Chris. I'm gonna make you wear a different hat. You're one of the best professionals in the world, but now you have multiple locations in pro shops. You and Mikey Tang are partners, and you have some great pro shops there in the Central Ohio area. Give us a little insight of what you've seen with the original Equinox and now what you feel like as far as your customer base and this addition to an Equinox Solid.
Yeah, we sold, a million Equinox, it seemed like. I mean, everyone was coming in wanting them. Everyone left super happy. We had a lot of customers come back, thanking us and telling us how great they were bowling with it. So it was super, super popular, super successful. So when I found out about this one, I was personally excited for it, as well as knowing that the customers are going to love it because, the shiny, asymmetrics on these house patterns sometimes can get a little uncontrollable for certain players. So with that super defined friction spot out to the right, and then obviously a pretty sharp cutoff of the pattern towards the end, sometimes it actually almost kind of limits your misroom down lane on the fresh. So I think this one, having, that same core in it, being able to kind of dig in a little bit earlier, I think it's going to be able to control that down lane motion a bit better on the fresh. and then you'll be able to transition into the Equinox. Like Rob said, we have some videos comparing the two, and I was thoroughly impressed how well they played off each other. Sometimes you get multiple balls in a line, and maybe they're not that different, or they're so different that you almost use them in two different windows. But I can fully see several people just going straight from Equinox Solid right to Equinox and being able to finish the night.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was a big thing is we knew the Equinox was really good for a lot of players and a lot of styles, but you just said there, sometimes the friction spot gets a little bit big and the Pearl wants to go a little too much sometimes, and then we get a little more left, and sometimes it's a little bit it gets a little cleaner through the oil. I mean, the adhesion cover is stronger than any other Pearl cover, so it still wants to dig in and grab, but still, you're right. There's still some moments where, hey, I need a little more texture, and even as players, you guys will be the first thing you do to a ball like that. Oh, let me just hit it a little bit with an Abralon. Let me just break the shell just a touch. And that's the beauty of even the big Pearl cover and an A1S. We knew that we could break the covers on those a little bit if we needed to blend them out, and that was great. But sometimes players, as you know, customers are very, very hesitant sometimes about changing the cover stock on a factory ball. And as players, we know that. I mean, I bowled league last night, and I pulled a gremlin out. Okay, I pulled a gremlin out. We're in a storm thing, but I'm talking about gremlin. This is SPI. But I pulled out my gremlin last night, and I threw a few shots. I knew it was close, and then I hit it with a surface. And the guy I was bowling with that on the other team looked at me, and he said, "Hey, isn't that ball supposed to be shiny?" And I said, "It's the right ball motion. It's just a touch clean. I just need to slow it down a little bit front to back." And he kind of... It was like that moment where he just went, huh. And he's like, "Can I change the surface?" And weirdly enough, he had an Equinox. It was on the rack. And oh, this is made. No, it's true. It was sitting on, and he's like, "Could I do that to that ball too?" I'm like, "Yeah, any ball you can change the surface." And there were a couple young guys that were, two of them were two-handers. One of them was just a very straight down and in bowler, and then they had two lefties. It was kind of unique. And so just that, when you said that, it made me think of that last night. Here I was hitting the ball with a little bit of Pearl ball, a little bit of surface, just because I needed it to be a touch clean, but to read it front to back. And that's the beauty of these covers, and they're so versatile. And Rob, you as a tour consultant, the first thing we do in practice sessions, walk around with the Abralon in our hands, and if it just barely, if it's not quite enough, it just maybe 2 pins or it's a soft on the 10. What's the first thing you're gonna do?
You're going to scuff it. You got to try to maximize that window.
And a lot of times, these guys and girls, the balls don't always stay at that factory finish. We'll adjust and change. But for us, as far as manufacturing side of it, we're always trying to create the diversification across the line that you can leave them with the factory finish if you feel comfortable and you want to do that, or you can change it, or we can just, once again, you have an option of an Equinox solid. You have options of other solids that you can use as well too, with a little more volume if need be. That's the beauty of having a versatile line. That's the beauty of having multiple. As Chris, you stand there in the shop, all those balls on the wall behind you are that point where you have lots of options to choose from for your customer. And as a player, you want those same options as well too. And this was, for us in this Equinox Solid, was a nice augmentation into the line, into all 3 lines that are produced here in Utah, between the Storm brand, the Rotogrip brand, and the 900 Global brand.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things is just because you sand a pearl ball does not make it a solid. I think,
Correct.
As silly as that may sound, a lot of times I hear it coming into the pro shop where, you buy the brand new, the shiny bowling ball, it looks amazing. But yeah, sometimes it is just a little bit too clean where, like you said, you guys make them out of factory. You guys design them that way for a reason, to fit those broad gaps. But, when you want to take your game to the next level, you start, narrowing down how it is for your particular game. And sometimes you do need that clean, shiny ball just to pick up just a little bit earlier. But just because you have a Equinox, the original with some surface on it versus an Equinox solid, still very different chemistries and still very different bowling balls. So yeah, don't be hesitant about changing surfaces because it doesn't change the core characteristics of the bowling ball.
Nope. Rob, you had something you wanted to share, buddy?
Yeah, this conversation that has led. There's a really good question kind of in the chat. That says, "Is the new Equinox good for leagues still?" And I think if you and Alex could kind of maybe in a simplistic form, just elaborate on why this one is also good for those leagues, the wide variety of lane patterns and conditions that are out there.
Fire in, Alex.
Yeah, so like Chris kind of talked about this a little bit. Those patterns in league are generally higher ratio, right? There's a very defined spot where there's like a ton of friction and there's basically no friction. So yeah, when you get those shiny balls, sometimes they can get a little bit erratic, but that's where with A1S we found with that enhanced oil absorption and more adhesion to the lane, it kind of blended out both directions of that friction. Now, as we were saying, if you do bowl on something that has a little bit more volume or something that's a little bit tighter, you can ball up to something like an Equinox Solid. It has more surface on it, but still doesn't get offline quite as early, even with that 2000 finish. So you're just going to blend out the pattern a little bit better and give yourself a bigger window, as you said, Rob. That's always what we're looking for, right? More miss room, more window front to back, trying to be able to slow our ball down consistently while maintaining entry angle down lane is the big key there. So you're just going to see it's a good step up from it. It'll allow you to play on the fresh a little bit more consistently, and then you can ball down to the original Equinox and still be able to shape it a little bit more after the front of the lane starts to blow apart.
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo those in Alex's words. Yeah, you're just trying to create the versatility. With the original development of the original ball was really a lot of different players, a lot of different styles, a lot of different conditions that you could hit with the original Equinox, and even at that, you still have some gaps in where you want the ball to shape a little bit. And this Equinox Solid is just now it's even more and fills the gap even more, and it just enhances that even to a greater extent. And so it's exciting for us. And I know it's funny as the word around the office is when people start seeing the balls and we're doing the testing and it's a lot of the word home run keeps coming to mind of a lot of different people. It's like this is a home run. This ball's, I mean, it's just really good. It's got a lot of shape. It just sees it. It does the right thing. And that's exciting for us, and it's exciting to introduce that to Storm Nation and to the world. And Alex, all the testing and all the balls, and then Rob comes in, and he's been part of that equation of the feedback of the balls from the field and the feedback from the players, and Chris as well, all that. And then coming in here, Rob, you got to see it raw and fresh, and so did Chris. And I think it was one of those kind of those aha moments. It's like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Oh, for sure. I'm not one to throw the home run word around all the time. As a bowler, I think Alex is probably a little bit the same. Where a home run is a big deal. And like I said, when we put holes in them, they brought them over to the lanes for the first time. I was thoroughly impressed with the initial ball motion continuation of this new ball.
And that's it's a test of all the hard work that Alex, myself, Chad, Steve, the testers that do it behind the scenes that you don't see, Giorgio, my wife Lindsay, you got Matt Martin, myself, Alex. That's all of us. There's a wide variety of people that kind of go into this whole process of before we ever get to this spot of sending it to the public. There's a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of, as Alex alluded to, is that April of 24 for the shape, and then the ball comes out that much later, almost a year later, and then it's very rare we go quickly to anything. It's a tried and true process. It is proven over the years, and we continue to stick to that. So Blair, do you want to take some questions from the chat? I know that they're loading up over there.
A lot of people just want to compare it to some other products like close to absolute power, maybe where does it fit with Ion Pro Solid? Like, where does it fit in the lineup?
Sure, I can kind of, I'll elaborate a little bit and let Alex talk a little bit more, but Absolute Power, I mean, that was a cleaner reactor cover that was designed on an asymmetric, that was really designed to be something that's asymmetric, that was cleaner, a cleaner footprint, but was still an aggressive core, and that it worked really well, and in its definition of where we were trying to fit it. But this one's going to be quicker, a little sooner off the lane, and to me a little more adhesion, a little more stick to the back, a little more dry lane coefficient friction, so that gives it a little more shape on the dry. Where Absolute Power was still, that cover was a little stiffer altogether, and a little less friction. But that Absolute Power was perfect in its moments where we needed it, when the lanes were breaking down. They were getting choppy, and there was getting a little bit of oil down the lane, and it was a stronger inner. That shape wanted to get forward a little bit more. So yeah, everything has its fit. And so to me, the Equinox Solid's a little quicker, a little more round, a little more continuation down lane, just because of the combination of cover and core. So Alex is shaking his head, so he must agree. Yes.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head.
And the other thing too is, I think that the standout that everybody wants to know is, how's it compared to an Ion Max? How's it compared to a Hyperdrive? The two big balls that come out of Utah these days. I mean, and you got to look at the Hyperdrive as a higher RG, asymmetric with a huge cover on it, a little more torquey. That shape is definitely, kind of, I call it like the asymmetric barbell that I built a few years back in the original X Series balls. But yeah, mass is heavy on the end, more of a streamlined X to Y, mass along that YZ planes. So it's a very torquey shape. But it's cleaner. Then you get Ion Max, which is something that low RG, based on the RG bands and the ellipses that Alex built through there, and I'll let him talk a little bit about that. Is that one wants to get offline faster, has more defined asymmetry, and it does get a little more forward, but that's a huge cover, low RG, faster, smaller spinning core with these ellipses. Wouldn't you say, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the biggest mass on that Element Max core is in the center, and then it progressively gets smaller to both sides. So that's like literally the opposite of something like that Hyperdrive or the Absolute part. So you're going to see that spin up a little bit faster. Again, you also have much stronger cover and NRG on that. So again, you have nano-based cover, much more teeth to kind of grab into the lane there, especially in the oil. So you're going to see that force you left faster, hook more boards in the front, be smoother off the end of the pattern, where Equinox Solid kind of gets further down the line, but not as much as, like you said, something like an Absolute Power, like you said, much stiffer, much further down the lane, along with the shape enhancing it to get further down the lane too. So I would say somewhere in between Equinox Solid is somewhere in between Ion Max and Absolute Power. And that makes it a little bit more usable for more overall people, just because it falls right into that more center kind of area of a solid sanded asymmetrical ball.
Yeah, and then one of the questions was, how's the Ion Pro Solid fare into this one too? So the Ion Pro Solid on that is the lower diff ball, still low RG, lower diff. They're still intermediate with it, but it's the TX16 covers cleaner. That I'll let Chris, TX16 and the Ion Pro Solid is one of his favorite balls of the summer. So give us your thoughts, because you are a huge fan of Ion Pro Solid, and now you've thrown this Equinox Solid. So give the fans a little bit of what you see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the teeth on this A2S is definitely significantly stronger. Obviously that Ion Pro Solid comes shinier out of the box as well. So just straight out of the box, the Ion Pro Solid with that lower diff as well, it's going to want to shoot through the fronts and the middles quite a bit more than what this Equinox is, and give you a little bit more of that stronger continuation down lane. So I would say Equinox Solid definitely, I hate calling it a step up, but it's definitely a step forward in the lane pattern of where that's going to start reading it. Still giving you that stronger continuation down lane, but this would be kind of that little higher volume, and then that Ion Pro Solid wouldn't be a bad ball afterward, because I think you can throw this Equinox Solid for quite a bit longer than what you typically can for the stronger balls. So you may even be able to kind of skip that next progression depending on what you're bowling on, and then you could probably go into something like an Ion Pro Solid, later in the day.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Blair?
A lot of people want to know what the scent is.
Ooh, the scent. It's always unique with fragrances. Because, I mean, I think the biggest thing, we have 30,000 different. Oh, there it is. He's smelling
Smells
it there.
good.
So, yeah, 30,000 different fragrances, I think, from the library of fragrances that we can choose from. But not all of them come through. So we've tried some fragrances. It smells great. And then you put it in urethane and it dissipates and it doesn't come through. And then others, you put just a drop in, it feels like you poured the whole cover in grape jelly or something like that, or cinnamon sugar honey bun or something like that. But in this one, I mean, it's a cherry apple slush. So think about you as a kid, and you're going in there, and you're getting the snow cone at the baseball game, and you're going over to the thing, and you're squirting the cherry into it, you're squirting the apple into it, and then you kind of catch that little whiff, and you're like, oh wow, that smells really good. Yeah, kind of that whiff of a mix between a cherry apple. I don't think you'd mix a cherry apple pie. Doesn't sound very good, but those two separately, they're great fragrances. But when you mix them in and candles and everything else, and I think what's funny is when me and the kid go to the store and you buy those little Airwick that you plug in the wall and the little fragrance things. I'm like, hey, Aiden, pick one out. So he'll walk and you can scratch and sniff, and he's sniffing all of them. And he's like, but Dad, I can smell that cinnamon, but I can't smell that apple. I'm like, and it's just the same thing. You're going to have the unique flavors that blend together in this. It's just a really good smelling ball, but cherry apple slush.
The other question that came up a couple times was, does the cover have nanotechnology?
Anytime you go down a path of really strong solids, really strong, you're trying to create that where you're trying to create and friction enhancements. Now, this is not a true NRG cover. Are there always anything in bonds that create linkage chains across this? When you take an isocyanate and a polyol and you mix it together, all the magic's in the polyol, and you put all the additives and enhancements in the polyol. When they mix together, there are certain things that in the bond and linkage chain that leave in our excess and other balls of NRG. Those are nanospheres that we leave in there. And then sometimes in the chemistry of this, there are other residual chemicals that can enhance and create and give the feel of a nano type cover. But no, in this situation, we have just a unique chemistry and friction here. Alex, anything else you want to share on that one?
Yeah, I would agree. It's not a nano base, but the way it rolls, you kind of feel like it has some hints of that. So I could see why, especially when people throw it, you would feel that way. But it's kind of the magic of this new A1S breakthrough of the cover stock. It's very unique, and it's a little different than anything that we've ever had, and it's been pretty well received so far. So we're pretty excited about it.
What else you got, Blair?
This one specifically for Chris. Zach wants to know, did you have to slow your ball speed down to get it to shape on the 46-foot pattern?
Actually, no, not at all. And Rob can attest to that. It slowed down with pretty good ease. I felt like I could be aggressive with it, and I mean, like you said, even saw in the highlights there. I leaked one to the right there, and it still saw the middle part of the lane well, and was able to make it back around the corner. So no, I felt like I could be aggressive and actually use the longer pattern to kind of create a little bit hold for me, knowing that this ball was going to slow down and go through the pin. So I think that was that is one of the big reasons I liked it so much.
Yeah, and you guys can see that too in the video. The more aggressive Chris gets, I mean, it's cleaner, it's farther off his hand, you see. And there was a little bit of that bounce in the lane. If he's trying to get slower and smoother, you're going to notice it's a little softer in the lane, a little more rolly. So it definitely, he was getting after it a little bit, and actually trying to throw it out there a little bit because it was wanting to go. You could see it.
Yeah.
What else you got, Blair?
I think the last question, Jerry wants to know what goes into picking the colors. A lot of people have already commented on the colors of this ball.
I think this is the hardest thing, and Alex will attest that this is the hardest thing, and Steve Klemkin and Chad McLean and Everybody all the time. That's a beauty, isn't it? Yeah, look at that green, white, and black. It just you're always trying to look at what's in the current line. You're trying to look at what's in the marketplace. You're trying to look, and you also look at what's the trending colors in the world. Every year, it's a fact and trivia. You can look it up. There's a color for each year. So I don't remember what 2025 is. Blair, you might remember. I think it was purple last year. There was a shade of purple this year. Yeah, there was. Yeah, there's unique tones that happen. But anyway, we come across this color. We were trying to find kind of that uniqueness. We liked the white, and then we just had a couple different variations. And then this green one, we put this green, and it was like, But what really set the stage was when Tyler Jensen walked in, and he goes, "What ball's that?" And I said, "It's one of the thoughts for the Equinox slot." He goes, "That's beautiful. I think that's," and then we all kind of looked at it and we're like, "It's different. It's different than anything else." That's the other thing. You're trying to stand up, be different. But you're trying to also use some of those combinations of the past that have been successful. But this one was unique, and this green, white, and black just kind of stood out. There was no love of any football or baseball teams that were green, white, and black. If it was, you'd have a orange, white, and black ball, but without, who day anyway. But no, it kind of came about by trying to be different. And then the unique thing is sometimes colors and the way you test, and some perform differently with the differences in the pigments versus dyes. And this one just matched up in every part of it, where the color scheme with the cover stock combination and all the different iterations, this one just stood out. We had some other looks and some other colors, but sometimes, yeah, it's just it was the most appealing. All right, Blair, any other? Are we done? Anything else from the Chris, before you leave us? Anything else you'd like to share with the group before you get to work, drill some balls? Because I know your dad's on vacation and now you've got to drill balls there.
Yep, it is. It's about that time to get to work. But no, I'm just super excited for this one. And probably a lot of people, watch the PBA Tour and probably notice I haven't thrown a whole lot of the big, strong bowling balls, just because they tend to get offline for me a little bit too quickly. And I'm excited for this one because I feel like it's finally one that I'm going to be able to throw for a long time. A couple different layouts that I've thrown on them. I like them so far. They give a good variation to differences as well. So you're able to drill them differently. So I could see this, having multiples in the bag as well to do different things, whether I want to play a little straighter with one, or I want one that's still going to continue down lane and be able to get further left with. So the versatility of it, I'm really, really excited for. So I can't wait to keep throwing it.
All right, Rob, final thoughts?
I just want to, thank everybody for getting together today. It's always good to, chat about new product. You can see the excitement on everyone's face, when we're getting ready to put something out there to the public for them to get in their hands. And, I think we've got something special here. And, we're just here to help the consumer make bowling better.
Yep. Alex?
Yeah, final thought from R&D. A1S, A2S, a lot of work went into it. Lots of different covers. You wouldn't believe the number of test balls that we go through. So it's really nice to get one that's sticking pretty well, and an enhancement off the original Equinox. I think, you guys as bowlers are going to really enjoy it, and it'll make the game more fun for you. So we're excited.
On a side note, I just want to thank Alex for cleaning up the floor behind him on his office, because he's always got half balls and everything else over there. And I was like, hey, look, man, your office is so clean. I'm not saying anything. Nobody can see mine. Anyway, I guess final thoughts for me is it's the biggest thing is always it's great to get out here and to especially get to spend an hour with these guys. I mean, you got some of the coolest guys in our team here with Rob and Alex and Chris. This is fun, and it's just nice to get to share some insights behind the development, some insights to what they saw in raw testing, and just to get to share that with the world. And I feel very fortunate that I get to be part of this team and been part of this team for a long time, and to get to develop some cool stuff and bring that to the public. And speaking of public and bringing it to the public, the release date, Blair, October 17th is the release date on this Equinox Solid. So I know it's a not quite a month away, but it's a few weeks away. These balls will go into the sets, and the matchmakers for the regional managers, I think they go in today. So if you guys are doing have a chance to go to a store matchmaker across the country, you're going to get to see this firsthand. You're going to get to throw it firsthand, and there are balls in those sets for a wide variety of players. There are definitely some two-handed layouts in there as well too. So everybody gets a chance to enjoy this new ball, this new iteration out of Storm HQ. But I think the biggest thing is thanks for everybody tuning in today. It's always a pleasure to get to see everybody and see all the people in the threads, and lots of people I've known for a long time, and a lot of newcomers, and a lot of great questions, and we appreciate that. And just to give you a little tidbit of what's coming in the future, there is a lot of innovation coming. There is a lot of cool innovation coming. It's not just in bowling balls. And we're excited to keep pushing this envelope, not just with bowling ball technology, but with other things as well too. So I know it's only a tease and it's only a snippet, but there's a lot of cool stuff coming. I did share a little bit with Chris, and Rob's knows a little bit, and Alex definitely knows a lot of it. So we're excited. We're excited to share that with you, and we will share it with you as the time is right. But I want everybody to have a great weekend. I know there's a lot of sports going on this weekend, especially in my world. I love golf and the Ryder Cup, and we're off to a terrible start. But, you got a good Ohio State game this weekend. Oh, no, I said it. Rob's got a no Nebraska game this weekend, so he's okay. I know I saw Buff Love in the chat. That is a Nebraska helmet on the back wall there of Rob Gottschall's house, and that is a Bengals tumbler here. Yes, they're going to get beat by the Broncos on Monday because Joe Burrow can't stay healthy. But anyway, I want everybody to have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and always bowl up a storm.